Normally in post-production, you edit the film, lock your picture, and you do the visual effects, and then you'll score the film. Then you start your final mix.
But we're not talking normal here.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Return of the King is even though we had huge amounts of time, it always gets cramped.
On Lord of the Rings, everything was having to overlap. It came around time in our schedule where it's like, look, if we're going to shoot pickups, we have to start now. So basically, Peter went from cutting to then having to cut and shoot.
Another day down, and I've got to go into the cutting room and cut for a few hours. Then sleep and then cut and then sleep and shoot and cut and sleep and shoot. Never mind, it'll all get done.
We weren't finished by the time Howard was booked in with the orchestra. Howard uses the London Philharmonic to record. Peter had to be there with the music, and we had to go too.
We moved the cutting room to London, and Pete was dealing with the scoring sessions, and he was cutting when he wasn't at the scoring stage.
And then just come back in on Pippin and Sam.
Even though Peter was in London and we were doing sound effects, visual effects in Wellington, we needed his input and he needed our input. And so we set up this virtual private network, and we could have a daily conference with visual effects and sound effects. And we did every day, 1 hour a day.
I don't know how Peter copes with that sort of disparate number of calls on his attention. We were lucky to get him in for 2 or 3 hours some days. We just couldn't get him in the cutting room.
So poor old Howard was busy scoring to a picture that wasn't locked.
There were times where he would score something and then the cut would change, and it would affect the cue significantly enough to entail a re-orchestrating at times, recomposing at times, and definitely a re-recording of that cue.
We had recorded this, and they changed the edit of it. So things fell in a different place, so I'm just touching up a little part of it.
I remember sitting down with Paul Brusek. I'd prepared a small amount of documentation that just indicated where we were at, how much Howard had seen, how much he hadn't seen, and Paul looked at me and said, "Am I right to be a bit worried?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Because we were getting the cut so late, one couldn't afford to wait for locked sequences or finished visual effect shots to start the sound work.
And so we were back home mixing to pictures that weren't really finished.
They'd be in there trying to mix to something that was gray-shaded, blocky things, and they're trying to add footsteps and chains moving and all sorts of stuff. And they were just looking at me like, "Help, Dean, help."
The Witch King swinging the big ball thing, we didn't even have that shot. It was just like, we'd have a shot of him going, and then cut to a card, thing hits ground. And Pete was very funny. He'd go, "Well, just use your imagination. He's swinging this thing, bang." Well, it's easy for him to say because it's up here in his head. He knows what it's going to look like.
You multiply that by 1,500 shots, and you can understand the nightmare of trying to lay a soundtrack to non-existent pictures.
I know that. That's why I just leave it a bloody mess. Throw it at you as a mess and let you sort it out. I'm not going to figure everything out for you. That's your job.
On a professional level, I felt really sorry for those guys. I couldn't do anything about it. We did not expect to do the amount of work that we did.
At the height of movie 1, we were probably doing about 30 to 50 shots a week. Movie 2, that number climbed up towards, 70. We're all like, 70, that's a lot.
And yet here we were in a situation on film 3 where months out, we knew we had to deliver 100 shots a week after week after week. So it's like, can we step up to that level?
And it's not just simple shots. These are like gargantuan shots that would be a money shot in any other movie, and we had just sequences of them.
You look at that mountain and you just start chipping it away with your toothpick.
At that point, blind faith does have to kick in, because based on all your previous experience, there's no way you can do the task that you're faced with at that point.
And until we had the cut, we couldn't do anything. The key was getting the cut.
The film was getting a bit long. We kept moving things around and never really sort of getting to grips with tightening things up too much.
Drove Mark Ordesky to distraction, pushing the limits, pushing the schedule.
Because we were still shooting all kinds of plates.
Action! I would end up just constantly having to stand up in front of the crew and go, so it's just going to be one more week, you know? And they'd said, yeah, right.
Having a shooting crew in Wellington, Peter was able to actually say, hey, I could use another close-up of something, slap it in the cut and say, yep, that's working just fine, while he was actually editing the film and scoring the film in London.
We set Howard up in a suite at the Dorchester, and when he wasn't at scoring sessions, we basically made him a prisoner of the Dorchester.
Because in the end, the whole process of music is very much a mathematical exercise.
Which is that he can only write 2 minutes a day.
Which is a hell of a lot. 2 minutes of full orchestral music a day.
So whenever anything comes up with schedule, he's saying, just do the math. If we need 20 minutes of music, I need 10 days. And that wasn't going to work on this film.
2 became 3, became 3.5, became 4, became 5, and then towards the end it just became a sprint, and he had to do 6+ minutes of composing a day.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Excellent.
Everyone is suddenly wanting to know exactly how panicked should we be. Mildly panicked, or should we be suicidal?
Okay, call the ambulance. Call and get the stretcher. Get those guys in here with the stretcher to get me upstairs.
The strangest part about it is, even though it seems like you're so up against the wall when this stuff is going on, Peter is still throwing in new stuff, and he's still adding sequences.
Peter was going to have, he said, every shot that he could think of is going to go in there.
We just kept getting more and more shots. I mean, we would finish shots, and more would get turned over to us than we finished that week. We were going the wrong way.
You know, week 6, it was 700 to go, and week 5 it was 800 to go, and you go, we just finaled 100 shots. How did it go up? Oh, we got 200 new shots.
It just became so insurmountable that it didn't hurt anymore.
Trying to get this done as fast as we can at the moment. Yeah, it's got to go out for a reel tonight.
In the last 2 months of the delivery, we had as many shots as films 1 and 2 combined yet to do.
It was kind of akin to being a very slow swimmer in a very big ocean. You know, you have a desert island way off in the distance, which is your sanctuary, and no matter how hard you paddle, you just can't seem to get to the other side.
A quote that we'd all seen in a magazine from Peter when he was in England saying, everything is under control. And we put in brackets around it, in London.
Everyone here at Weta Xerox copies of it, you know, of everything is under control, and just taped it everywhere.
Don't worry, everything is under control, you know? We were completely out of control.
I started to realize that what was happening was that Peter would think about changes, but he would only convey them to certain people, because I think as a director he felt, gee, if I tell the visual effects guys that I might drop that shot, they might stop working on that shot. So maybe I better not tell them, but I'll tell the composer. And I started to realize that I had to actually talk to all these different people so that we all knew what was going on, not to undermine what Peter wanted to accomplish, but just to set our priorities so that we would actually deliver the film.
Barry Osborne made the decision that every night at 6 o'clock at Park Road Post, the key figures from each department, the visual effects, the sound, the music, everyone would sit down and we would just go through and say, well, this is what we did today. And Barry would check it against his list of things that had to happen. And if something hadn't happened, there had to be some restructuring somewhere so that it could happen, so that we were still going to hit the delivery of the film.
This is the official document of dates. Until this changes, there's no change.
The Barry meetings got pretty intense. I mean, Barry got pretty vocal at times.
See, as I say, I don't care.
Yeah, right.
As long as I get a reel on these dates. Some people thought I was a little too short, but I just really wanted to keep people focused, because to take time out to do a meeting sometimes would seem like kind of a distraction from where they should be focused, but it was so important that we shared this information. If you just tell me that there's a problem.
No, there's no problem.
There's no problem yet. If there's a problem, I want to know about it.
We'll get it first.
All the schedules were getting pushed. It was becoming increasingly apparent that their dates weren't going to work, and they were going to have to move their stuff, and so they were getting a lot of stress on their side.
If we miss these dates, we miss release. Okay.
And they tried to start doing the final mix, and they didn't have a final cut in there.
We got to start the final mixing on this date, period. Like, we're not ready to start. I knew we weren't ready to start, but we did anyway.
To war! And such time and energy is spent by editors working through change notes the size of books and trying to rework the material in to the new stuff.
When Shelob is moving, every time one of her legs hits the ground, it makes a sound.
And just a small tweak in that shot may move where that sound goes. Or you're doing a shot and you've got a previs of a Feldbeast flying through the frame, and then there's a rumor that we start hearing that, oh, Peter just decided to add 4 Feldbeasts into the shot.
Well, we had to know about that because we had to accommodate a few more screams.
It's like throwing a dart at a flock of birds. It's like, it's kind of like everything's moving and it's a constantly moving target, and the deadline's getting closer.
It's getting a little bit painful. I haven't had a day off in about 3 months, and the hours are getting pretty crazy, but we are going to get there and it's going to be great.
Because the job is so big, it's so long, it is unknown that there are going to be periods like this. Just deal with it and get on with it.
Once you start working on 7 days a week, long hours, just basically cutting each scene, so now you're cutting this scene, tomorrow you're cutting this scene, tomorrow you're cutting this scene, at no time are you actually stopping and evaluating the latest cut of the movie. You know, that's a whole other exercise to say, okay, we're not going to do anything today other than think about what we have.
We looked at the movie as he had cut it, and it was flat because there was so much in there. You couldn't ride the roller coaster that telling a story should be, and you didn't have the emotional impact that the story should have.
It was just too slow. It just sort of made it, the momentum suddenly got lost.
We had to pay off. We had to be great. Peter knew it had to be great.
And you're seeing it and you're saying, gee, that's almost working, but I wish we had more time. And are we going to make it? And is he going to really get this cut refined so that this film really sails?
And Pete said, hey guys, I'm really sorry for this tight schedule and the crunched hours, but it's turned out to be the mother of all films. I mean, it turned out I have to get it right.
Sometimes you just have to have the confidence and the belief in the fact that you're going to pull it off, and you just keep going forward every day, and you don't allow the self-doubt or any doubt, a shadow of doubt to enter into your mind, because you just have to keep going forward.
Peter Jackson has not yet approved the schedule, and we'll find out about that tomorrow, so stay tuned. We're all hopeful this will work.
Peter could no longer be in London. He had to be down at the final mix, physically on the stage.
We left London, fly back to New Zealand, back into the cutting room. We still had only 5 reels locked, 5 reels out of 10 altogether. And so we were still going like the clappers.
Back in the cutting room, we'd do more work on another reel, and then they'd be back down to the sound mix. And so all this process was backwards and forwards. In the meantime, we're still waiting for effects to come in, because they changed the scenes as well.
We are under 5 weeks away from delivery, and we have just about the same number of shots that we delivered the entire of film 1 to go. About 540 shots to go.
We had footage, they were still shooting at that stage, elements for all the effect shots.
Action!
Not until we had the actual shots themselves, something approaching the finished shot, where you could find down the pacing and actually make the battle work.
The miniature unit was filming in November. The release was December.
The last major sequence we did was the Black Gates. Just moments before the whole thing had to be delivered.
That whole sequence of 3 reels, it's about an hour. We did all that when we got back to New Zealand in those 3 weeks.
It didn't matter how productive you were towards the end there. More shots were coming in.
Eagles! The eagles are coming!
Dina looked at each other and go, what do you mean eagles? Where are these eagles? There's eagles in this movie, what?
You'll get something up there on screen. You can bash something out for any old shot, but that wasn't what we were about with film 3 at all. It had to be the best.
And all the while, we've got the drum beat going on. It's gotta get done, gotta get done, gotta get done.
I remember being in ADR and kind of suddenly getting that fear that, wait a second, this one actually may not make it.
The newspapers here had even started to run stories, like the mayor of Wellington, Kerry Prendergast, was having to go on record saying, "Oh no, Peter will finish the film. We're not going to delay the premiere," because there was sort of rumours that the film was still unfinished.
We had this immovable date that New Line had presented as saying, this is the point when we need the film.
Because even after we deliver, they still need to then deliver to all the different international distributors around the world because it was a worldwide release.
Was there probably a lot of tension? Absolutely there was. Was there a lot of not knowing what to do? How are we going to finish this movie? How are we going to meet the foreign delivery requirements? I heard all that stuff, and I have to take it in one ear and go, you know what? I still work for the director.
For some reason, there's this sort of fear, especially in the studio, that, I'm going to not finish cutting until after the film's supposed to be released, therefore it's going to be late. But of course I'm not going to do that because it's not responsible filmmaking to do that. You have to deliver your movie on time, but you just have to deliver the movie just in time. That's the trick, you see.
I think the original delivery was about like end of October, and of the entire movie completed, and we were still mixing in November.
Even though the scheduled delivery time was really coming up on us hard, Peter was sure that he wanted to have the quality at the top, all the way to the end, and didn't want to cut any corners just because the delivery schedule was hitting him.
It's just trying to get everything finished, just trying to get everything, the last little tweaks and bits and pieces just done so we can just get this film signed off.
And we actually had a little mantra within the sound department. When we thought things were getting bad, we would say, well, as bad as we think it is, over at Weta, they got it worse.
Yeah, it's not great to cry in the job, but I think that there were moments in time when we all probably did.
We were doing the destruction of the Black Gates. We had the Pelennor Fields. We had all the biggest shots to deliver.
So we just burned the candles at both ends until we got everything in that we wanted to get in.
It was less a problem of keeping them going and keeping them enthused as it was a problem of keeping them healthy and telling them to go home.
Every day that ticks by, we have to do 20 shots. Every hour, somebody has to final a shot. A shot can take anywhere from 2 to 10 weeks to do, so that starts to get a little scary.
This one, I've been working on this one since Monday, and it's due on Friday.
There were compositors at the end, the last month, that would go home every other day to sleep.
Shampoo. Prepared.
The conference room where we met every day for dailies started to get a little bit ripe. Too many 7-day work weeks and too many people staying overnight. It started to get a little over the top.
Most definitely wouldn't be doing that for any production or any director for that matter.
When your leader is feeling the crunch, you try to help carry the burden for him as well.
He knows how far he can push everyone to the last minute, break everyone's back maybe along the way, but we'd still be able to get it done and get it in the theater.
Return of the King was about as close to the wire as you would ever want to go. We actually went beyond the wire.
The mix and the picture and the visual effects literally were coming in a matter of weeks before the world premiere.
We plugged in the last 10 or 11 shots, I think, on about the 10th or 12th of November.
Reel 7 was the last reel that we got. Howard got that reel just before the premiere in Wellington.
At the end of it, I think we delivered all of the sound elements on the 15th of November.
This is the first movie that I've ever worked on where the visual effects were actually finished after we were required to have delivered the soundtrack.
Such a fever pitch at the end. I mean, we worked, I think, almost 48 hours straight for the last shot.
It just made sense that the last thing out was the shot where the ring is melting. We had started it months and months and months ago.
Peter came to Weta to approve the final shot.
We were all living on this high that, the ring, it's the last shot.
Came into the conference room, we had the crew there, and he looked at it.
And everybody's like behind Peter following, in unison, freaking out.
And everyone did like a silent wave behind him.
Woo! And did this little wave around the room, and we were all very excited. So that ring was that very last perfect, it's gone, and this is Wednesday. When was the premiere? Monday?
Right up there, right to the very last minute.
It just barely made it in the door.
The gears just rotated and they fell into place and it meshed, and you all of a sudden have this masterpiece.
I think there's a few sort of stressed people there at the end, especially in the distribution area.
I'm sure there was some guy blow drying the prints as it was being put into the boxes and shipped out. I mean, it was definitely that tight.
Someone used the analogy that Peter was the pilot on this one, and he knew how much fuel he had in his tanks, and he landed that baby at the last final minute.
In a way, no one should make films this way because it's really the most difficult way to do it, and yet you could argue if the outcome is good, then it obviously isn't the wrong way.
Right, if someone says you can't do it,
that's where we go.
That's where we
go. Right, we live there.
Yeah.
I think it's a measure of the enormous support that Peter had from everybody working on the production.
We're done. Number 3.
It wasn't just Peter's film, it was our film. It was here, it was ours. We just wanted to see it the best that it could be.
You know, it's important to have experiences, and at least this has been a good experience in how to deliver a film at the last minute. You know, so we'll know how to do it now. Should it ever come in handy again in the future?